Hey, everyone, my name is Joe Brigette. This is, of course, WNH's, I guess you would call this our pre-show because it's the best sort of thing to go with here. Um, I didn't put WNH name to it mostly because we're still doing our normal everyday, just every week podcast version of things. And as a result of the men of thousand and so thoughts, we've got a lot to go over with that, but here's the weird part. See, Lee can't be here today, so I had to basically steal all of his login information so we could do a show that I didn't have to do on my normal, handheld uh, mobile phone. And I figured that would be a little more fun than to do the show like that, because there's a lot more fun stuff we could do with it this way, and I figured that would be more fun. Here's the weird part, though. I'm still not used to looking at the camera up here at the very top, so like right up here. I'm not used to that. I'm used to looking at a phone like this the whole time. So if I sort of have a dodgy eye looking thing for a bit, where I'm looking over here or looking over here, it's mostly just because it's weird to me. So yeah, there's that. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about, of course, a little bit of Hell in a Cell, considering that is the name of this broadcast. And number two, we're going to talk about things you guys want to talk about, as well as talk about a little of the stuff that happened from this past week. I kind of feel that's a pretty good thing to do. Seems pretty fair. At least I think it is. Uh, because I'm kind of new at this, I'm going to try and look at comments whenever I can throughout the show. But if I miss them right away, don't get mad at me. I'm trying my best to get to them. So make sure if you want to add comments and everything like that, make sure you do that below, wherever it might be. If you're on our YouTube or Twitch stream, add them there. If you're on Facebook on our WNH Live or WNH page, make sure to put them below, and I'll go over them as they come through. They may not come in immediately, so if you have a comment and you want to add it below, you can do so. Once it comes into me, I'll see if I can add it up. So let's see if I can actually do this properly here. So let's see if that shows. It did. I did it right. Yeah. First thing I want to talk about. This is the match that I kind of get a little irked about. It wasn't so much the match was terrible, because I think that would be unfair to say. It was a pretty good match. But it had a lot of things left to be desired in it. And that was mostly due to the fact that they had to water it down for the overall Fox network. And it's likely because they probably didn't plan for this match ahead of time. They probably planned the whole show out, and then they decided, hey, we need ratings. So they decided just to think, oh, I know what we'll do. We'll just, throw a some match on SmackDown because, reasons. And I'm not really against the idea of seeing some matches on the show, because ultimately it can be good. Ross had a few of them over the years, so it's not like it's never happened. We've had still cage matches on SmackDown before too, so it's not like this is weird. But what kind of gets me a little bit irked about it is because today, for those unaware, is Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the guys with children that actually see their children and hang around them and stuff. You're good people. But the only Father's Day kind of tie-in they had was Rey Mysterio versus Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship, which only happened because Roman Reigns decided to interfere in the Usos match with Rey and his son Dominic, mostly because the Usos lost. Roman was a little pissed off about that, so he decided to come out and get involved, basically just coming out there and just attacking. And while I might not like that very much, I get the reasoning for it. I think, understandably, he did it because he's frustrated. But whether he was frustrated or not, it doesn't matter, because he decided to put his hands on Rey Mysterio's son, Dominic, and, for lack of a better word, injuring his tag team partner and son, of course. As a result of all that, Rey decided to challenge Roman Reigns to a match, of course, that being Hell in a Cell. And that changed a lot of things. First, it was a situation where Roman would have a person to work with that wasn't the same guy, which is good. Rey has never really been inside a cell match, so it would be the first time we got to see Rey there. Roman Reigns is great inside cell matches, so we knew we get to see an experienced cell worker involved as well. So it all made sense for this match. And Rey was doing this basically to get revenge on Roman for what he did to his son. And on Father's Day at that, it made total sense. From a story perspective, it was all good. Everything was there that you wanted. But it was the only match in the card, that actually was a tie-in for the holiday today, that being Father's Day. And it was the one match you really couldn't move. And probably go on last for the show, too. You very well could easily have had this on tonight, and no one would have thought it should be below main event. But they put it on the SmackDown. And yes, it did main event SmackDown. Let's be fair. It did main event SmackDown. But it should have main event tonight. Because it's the only Father's Day tie-in they have. And it didn't make much sense to give it 15 minutes with 2 commercial breaks. And kind of throw it away. Like it was nothing. And it wasn't like Ray couldn't do a match like that. We've seen him do these crazy matches before. He had the body to do it. They still did the cell match. It wasn't like they never had the match. So all these things put together, it just made no sense to me when they thought, oh, this is a good idea. No, it wasn't a good idea because there was no reasoning for it that made any sense. And we all know it made no sense. So why we do it? I couldn't give you the answer for that because I don't know. There is no reasoning for it. But because of the fact they had to have a 3-match situation for the cell matches on the show, they decided to add another match for Hell in a Cell. That being a match already on the card, the SmackDown Women's Title match, which they wanted to be inside the steel structure. Now, here's the thing. That's what I would have done. But I would put that on SmackDown, make that main event of the show, which honestly would have been much better. Here's why. First and foremost, Bayley has worked in the cell before. Bianca has not. But it's 2 women main eventing on Fox. Pretty big network here in America. And it's not only main eventing, but it's main eventing inside the first ever cell match on that network, on that show. And it's for a women's championship match where I think it makes a lot more sense to put that there. It was not a bad thing to do. It easily gives you your cell match. Everyone's dialed in. It's the first ever thing. And it involves women rather than men, which a lot of people would find to be a little bit more marketability-wise good. Now, am I saying that they could put on a better match than Ray and Roman? No. But they very well could at the same time. In fact, I think given 15 minutes alone, Bianca and Bayley probably would do better than what we saw last night. I'm sorry, on Friday night. And I'm all for that. And I understand a lot of people's opinions about the idea that maybe they should have done Roman and Ray there because it was the only major match. And they very well could have Roman Reigns on the show tonight doing something. And that is all true. But we've yet to get any word on Roman Reigns being involved in anything tonight. He might make an appearance. It's always possible. But he's not going to do another cell match on the show tonight. Damn sure won't do another match with Ray right now. Dominic could easily be someone he works with next, sure, but if the whole thing was about trying to get revenge on what happened to Dominic, Ray has every right to attack Roman and everything, but now Ray's done. Dominic's not back for at least a little bit of time. Danger couldn't make it back for the cell match. Why would he be back for tonight? All those things are kind of up in the air where no one knows the answer to most of them. So a lot of it's kind of annoying to me. And I think that they should definitely have thought that through, where Bianca and Bayley would have been better to have on on that night show, main eventing, which they could main event without the cell anyway. They still have a great match together. So we all know they could easily do this without the cell. Add in the cell, it's even more interesting, and I think fans would buy into that. Now, you could say, well, it didn't make as much sense because the emotion behind Ray was why he wanted Roman Reigns on tonight's show. Okay, I get that. Fair point. But that's also why you don't give it to him. Because as a overall company, we were told of what happened. We were told basically what Ray wanted, but Ray does not control the cards. Ray is a superstar without anything more than a tag team title right now. To say he would call the shots is idiotic in his own right. And if Roman Reigns is supposed to be head of the table, wouldn't this man, who also is the current world champion, mind you, who's been champion since last year, around the summertime last year. I mean, we're going up nearly a year he's been champion here. we're supposed to believe that he's going to just do whatever Ray wants? That makes no sense from a story perspective anyway. So the entirety of the story is flat out dumb shit. It makes no sense. From the fact that Ray makes demands and gets what he wants, to the idea of putting the only Father's Italian show on SmackDown when it easily could have gone on tonight, and easily could have said, you'll still have your sub match, but it'll be Bianca and Bayley, and they never had to bring Ray and Roman into it. And ultimately, Bianca and Bayley didn't have a match set, at least a stipulation set for Sunday. They only had the match set up between the two of them. At the time, this match was going to be inside the cell. My assumption being they wanted to take the cell match off of one show and put it on another. So they thought, okay, we got to sacrifice this to give it to Bianca and Bayley. So in order to do this, we had to do something. So they thought the best way to do that would be just probably to have scratch one off. And they thought, well, we can't scratch one another women's title matches off because, and we'll get into this pretty soon, it's going to involve two major stars for you, and there's no need to move that match. Roman Reigns and Ray made the most sense theoretically if Reigns is supposed to be your second guy and McIntyre is supposed to be your number one guy, because that's the reason why McIntyre and Bobby is going to go on tonight. It's going to easily, I guess it would make sense to be main event of the show now because there's no other match on the card that makes sense to main event other than that match. And so all these things just really make no sense. A lot of it makes no sense because there's really no reasoning for most of it. And I like the idea of changing things up a little bit. And I like the idea of adding Bianca and Bayley inside a cell match. But this is also the idea of saying you could have done this on SmackDown where she challenges Bayley that night and says, I want you inside the cell. And we believe the cell will be there because we know the matches are going to take place in the same venue. So it makes sense for it to be in the same place. Now, you could say if this is another time and era, if they were on the road a lot, you couldn't get away with that. Fair point in all those things, because I think if this is any other era, yeah, you're right. Can't get away with it. But it's going to be inside the Thunderdome, the same place where we just saw SmackDown. So it's not that the venue's going to change. It's all going to be the same. With that being said, it makes a lot of sense to change that up a little bit, and I think they could have done that, but chose not to. I find that to be a little strange. You know what I mean? It makes no sense at all. None of this. So I'm kind of a little annoyed by it more than anything else. And I think most fans are going to say to me, Joe, you're getting kind of upset about this. People have been saying all the time, Joe, if you want things to change on the shows, they need to try something new. And when they try something new, you're pissed off about that. And yeah, it's a fair point to mention that. But also, again, they could have done a lot of things new. And SmackDown's not even the worst show. SmackDown's not a bad show. But SmackDown is the top-rated show as far as viewership every week for WWE. It's not NXT. It is not Raw. It is always SmackDown because of where it's placed. While Friday nights are bad nights for TV anyway, the fact that they are able to do whatever they want there is fine. But again, you could have still had the Sun match. You could have still had all those things and factors you wanted. It just wouldn't be Roman and Ray. That's it. The same things you're going to get are the same things you're going to get. You're still getting your Sun match. You're still getting an event. And you're going to probably have a bigger match because in the show with Bianca and Bayley, giving them probably a little longer than like 15 damn minutes, probably would make it better. In fact, that's really the drawback of what we saw with Ray and Roman. On pay-per-view tonight, they would have been given more time. But they were put on TV and therefore had to deal with commercials because there's no limited commercial break here. And NXT gets a lot of limited commercials because they deal with US Network on a cable network. So they're able to get away with moving off certain amounts of commercials. And they can have a limited amount. So you'll get your special sort of shows like Great American Bash, for example, that was able to get limited commercials, and they were given no commercials in the last like 30 minutes to an hour at one point. So things like that are easy to do with cable. You can't get away with networks because networks are owned by the network themselves, but they have to deal with affiliates, which cable does not. And affiliates are ultimately where a lot of your money comes from, essentially. So as a result of that, Fox has to allow these shows to or commercials to transfer through that allows your local networks to get money. So they're kind of restricted in what they can get away with. It's not fair for me to say they should have done something on Fox with limited commercials or give that more time because Fox can't do that. And to be fair to Fox, they just can't. Not their fault. They just can't. USA could. So if they would have put this on Raw, a cell match there, where it damn sure needed to have gone, because we all know that Raw is absolute shit. SmackDown's not the bad show. SmackDown doesn't have bad things overall. They're a pretty good show every week, and that's really mostly due to Roman Reigns, along with a lot of the stuff they're putting together with him and things surrounding that, like Seth and Cesaro, which we'll get to in a minute. So there's a lot of things like that SmackDown does great. They didn't need the cell match. Raw did, and it still sucked. This whole thing with Raw still sucked. They could have had a much better turnout and much better viewership if they would have said on Sunday last week, we're going to go ahead and get away with the Bobby and Drew match. Make that happen tonight. So on Monday night, we'll get that, I should say. That would have been far better off. And in fact, more people would have tuned into Raw for that because they know Bobby and Drew are going to put it on a completely amazing match. Give that the last hour of the show, dedicate your third whole hour to that, where you're opening up the whole thing by having your interest and whatnot. You do one last commercial break, and the last 40 minutes of the show is dedicated to Bobby and Drew. And if it were to have gone over for some reason or whatever, you're going to get away with that. We're never going to get away with that. On cable, they'll say, okay, you're going over, and we'll just kind of limit our stuff around to make that work. On network, you can't do that because, again, you're dealing with affiliates, and their news has to show up. So if news is moved, that becomes a problem. You can look into the situation with NBC and the Night Show, Conan and O'Brien, and Jay Leno's show with all the problems involved with that, that's a whole big thing in its own right. But that's whole story around that was mostly due to affiliates being pissed off, and that's the whole reason why that changed. But that situation with Fox, they're kind of limited. So the one network you do it on, where your show is going to be at, you could have done, and you chose not to use that on the show that needed it, but on the show that didn't need it, on a throwaway situation involving the one match you could not move. Did any of that make sense? Like, all these things are nonsense to me. And I know most people are going to see this and thinking it's griping and complaining, and I get that too. But if you're calling out the bullshit, it might sound like a complaint, but to be all fair here, it's complaint that's warranted. So there's that. Let's see here. Going over the week that was, let's look at some of the comments quick. I'm going to try and get the comments in. I don't know how well I'll do with that yet. Jason says, sup? I want to see Bucks versus Sixers on the Eastern Conference Finals. That'd be interesting. I was pretty short Hell in Styles match anyway. Yeah, that's the thing about it that kind of annoys people, that you could easily have that match get it more than like 15 minutes. But again, they're restricted in what the time they can give. So if this is on Raw and they only plan 15, 20 minutes for that match, if they went over a little bit, US Network is not going to get pissed off with them because they're okay with going over. In fact, it might even help their ratings going into the next hour. Whereas you don't get that ability on Fox. Let's see. What was the purpose of putting the title back on Drew after 2 weeks of Randy Orton having anyway? Okay, so here's the story behind that because it's all shitty here. So I'll explain it in the way that I think the best way is to explain it. So Drew had been champion for a while, right? And they wanted to do something where they switched it up a little bit. So they wanted it to be where Bobby Lashley defeated Drew McIntyre for the championship in some way. But they couldn't do that match until WrestleMania. So they have Randy Orton defeat Drew, and then Randy goes up into a buzzsaw, basically works with Drew again, gets beaten by Drew again. So Drew is being looked at as lesser than because of what happened last year. They want to keep Randy looking pretty solid because of the situation they were going into. Drew had also been a little injured, so they thought if he's going to stay injured, let's go ahead and hit it off of him now. So there wasn't a situation where we thought anyone knew much about Drew's stuff. At the time, Drew had probably been more than healthy to continue, but they didn't know. And Drew had also had a situation with COVID just around that same period of time. So all these factors kind of burst into a situation where they thought, okay, we need to do something here to take, if something were to happen, we got Randy. Randy's a fallout shelter for them. They needed to do something. So they thought, okay, we'll give Randy the title for a bit, and if we want to have Drew win it back quickly after that, we can. But this is also Randy's 400th time, and if he loses again, it just hurts his whole everything. And it's involved in a cell where he typically does really well. So this is a good match for Randy, a bad match for Drew, who'd never been involved inside a cell, never been involved of anything. So they thought, okay, we'll do this all the one time. So they didn't put him in the cell. They avoided all the things they wanted to do there. Went out to be just Randy defeating him. And it all kind of worked out weird. they I'm sorry, they gave him the cell match, but they didn't know what they wanted to do with him after that. So they thought, okay, we'll just have the cell match, and then we'll think what we do next with Drew. Drew was fine, so they thought, okay, fine, we're done with him there, but we need to have him win it back. So what do we do? Well, we don't want Bobby to beat him yet. So what do we do here? Oh yeah, there's Money in the Bank that Miz holds. So while Miz cash in on Drew, Miz has been beaten by Bobby. Bobby then works with Drew at WrestleMania. And the whole thing kind of worked out just like that. It made no sense because the COVID issue, because of possible injury with Drew. They needed to do something. They panicked, went with Orton to get out of that panic. Most felt it would have been better, myself included, to have had Drew drop the title at WrestleMania to Bobby, which I think would have been far better. But the Money in the Bank still be looming over things. So in order to get rid of the Money in the Bank, and to get rid of all the things around that, they kind of went with their best case scenario, in their eyes at least. And that was this idea with Bobby. I think the biggest problem with Bobby isn't Bobby Lashley's work rate, nor is it MVP's work with him. It is that they have made him look sort of like a face at one point, then as a heel, and it kind of didn't work for a bit. And that was mostly due to the fact that Miz was involved in everything, so it kind of mixed a lot of things up for a bit. The hell did... I just got a question sent to me. It makes no sense. They asked me, what is an unsexed duck? I thought, I don't know. A goose? Swan? Maybe you guys know the answer to that. I'm not really sure. But as I was talking about with Drew, that's kind of the whole thing of why it went that way. It makes no sense to do that way, but also it makes no sense to continue the story with Bobby and Drew that they've really started last year, but mostly kept around the title since like January. Now, Drew had a gripe initially, but now it's kind of weird. It doesn't make any sense. And a lot of it's just kind of nonsensical. So a lot of fans are really buying into it. In fact, they want Drew to lose tonight, but I think most people are assuming because this is loomed over him as the fact that if he loses tonight, this is going to be his last match for the title while Bobby's champion. That's a huge difference measure. It does take him out of the title picture automatically, puts him in an opportunity to win other things or do other things. I think there's a better spot for him right now. And I think the biggest reason why I say that is Drew is supposed to be their top guy, right? At least a new top guy. I'm all for that. Drew fits everything you want as a new top guy. He has the great kind of size and look that Vince wants. He has the wrestling ability fans want. He has the mic ability to do things everyone wants. I mean, everything about him screams top guy. So I'm cool with that. They even called him the chosen one for a reason. I mean, you needed a guy like that, and he's there. Use him. But there is such a thing as using him too much. And the entire existence of Bobby Lashley as champion has been basically thorned by this whole issue with Drew being there. So the idea that that Bobby thought of was, we need to make this whole thing different. If we're going to do a cell match, I'll give you your match. It'll be inside Hell in a Cell. It'll be for the championship. But if you were to lose, I don't want to see your ass again. I'm done with you. I can't stand you anymore. This is too much. Get out of my damn face. Leave. I agree with that stipulation for that reason alone. But it does, in a great way, of course, give you your way out of the problem of this being a throwaway match that makes no sense, that no one wants to watch again. It's going to be a match that has stipulation, which is big. Hell in a Cell is a good sort of match for anything. Doesn't matter if it's a third, fourth, fifth match or reverse match. It can give you a lot of good stuff because it's still a cell match. But the problem with it is, though, is that fans weren't interested in this whole thing with Bobby and Drew. We're done with it. And I think that we really started to realize that. Now, if you were to have Bobby lose tonight, you're getting the match happening again for a rematch soon. It's guaranteed next month. You're going to get it. So, to get away from that, and what I would do personally, especially if there's a plan to bring Brock Lesnar back soon for SummerSlam, I have it be where Bobby beats Drew tonight, goes to the next show, which I guess is Money in the Bank. It should be. It's July. He'll go up against some new opponent there. We don't know who it's going to be yet. We'll just throw some name out. Jeff Hardy. He goes in there, faces Jeff Hardy, beats Jeff, goes into the next event, which at that point would be SummerSlam time. Brock then comes back and then puts him down. Now you get your match you want to see. The match where you're going to have fans show up for SummerSlam. It's going to be a big show. You do Bobby and Brock there. Now, some would say, well, that happens, then Brock's likely to win. Sure, that's possible. But I'd have Bobby win. Here's why. Bobby's going to be there the next day. Brock's not. I like Brock. I think he's great. But Brock knows his place by this point. Brock understands. He's not going to be there every week. But he's okay with that. The thing with Brock that everyone loves most about him is that he's a businessman. Through and through. He doesn't get pissed because he's not winning a lot. He doesn't get pissed if he's not champion. He doesn't get pissed if he's not being pushed. He makes good money to show up and do whatever he's asked to do when he does it. If there's anything about that to love, it's everything about that. If you're WWE, you want a guy like that who's willing to do all those things for you because he'll do it because you told him to. And that's all he needs to hear. Most of the guys would fight those things, not Brock. Businessman Brock, everyone loves, especially creative. But that's why I think this gives you an opportunity to have Bobby Lashley be him, because now you bring the guy back who everyone knows is the only guy to stop Bobby, that could stop Bobby. He's the only guy on the field who could. Because Bobby's on this tear right now that after beating Drew McIntyre would be who's left. I mean, there's really nobody. And I've had to have a match with Bobby Lashley defeating someone on Raw before SummerSlam, where he goes in and beats this guy who is challenging for the championship, which you could easily get away with. And now you're done there for that time period where Bobby says, I've beaten everybody here that's worth has a name. Like, there's no one else here remaining that actually has anything for me. So if that's the case, and they're going to be touring again pretty soon, especially around August, just saying, you now have a situation where Bobby is getting this fan hatred behind him, but also slight love because he's still pretty damn good. So now your best way around that is to bring Brock back, surprising the fans that he's there, then build up to SummerSlam. Now, the problem with this is, though, is that Heyman is working with Roman. But if you separate Brock and Roman by brands, you don't have a really big problem with Paul skipping around. But if you had to take away Paul Heyman from the Tribal Chief, at least, it's easy to do now because Roman Reigns does not need Paul around right now. In fact, he never needed him to begin with, but it was good to have him there for obvious reasons. But if he were to say, Paul, you're my special counsel, not my manager, go be with your boy who needs you, I don't see a problem with that. I think Reigns knows at that point that he's just having Paul as special counsel. He does not have to do everything for him. Roman can do it for himself. He can talk for himself. He does not need Paul to do that for him. But if Paul had to do that, he's split between two different nights, which are likely to be in a similar location. And at SummerSlam, they're definitely going to be in the same place at the same time. So no problems here. The one real drawback will be if you had to do a match between Brock and Roman Reigns, say Survivor Series later on. That would be tough for Paul to choose from because he has to choose between the guy he manages and his Tribal Chief, who he's special counsel. So that would be the one thing that I think Paul Heyman would have difficulty with. But as of now, I don't see that happening. So we're good. All that having been said, though, I kind of agree with you too, Jason, going back to this whole thing. It was kind of weird to do this whole thing with Drew and everything like that. And I agree with all those things with Drew. But this is tonight, I think, is the last situation in time where we have to see Drew being basically forced into the title picture in some way for nearly 2 years. And that's a very big thing to think about because Drew was champion for around a year last time. And I'm a big fan of Drew. I think he's great. But fans are now starting to hate the guy they started to love in 2020. And I don't want that for Drew. I don't want him to become this next John Cena character where he's overused. And just far too much of this pushed in sort of thing happens in WWE. And to be fair to them, Raw does not have as many top tier names, especially with other guys, kind of leaving or being fired or thousands of other reasons. And so there's a lot of trouble with that. But I also think they're going to be able to kind of populate your show a little better pretty soon with certain people coming back that were gone for a bit, but nothing male-oriented at least. So there might also be a situation where they do a draft later this year, which could also equal out a chance to jumble up the roster a little bit. And I say draft, but I really mean like the shake-up thing. So there's a lot of things you can get away with here, but I think it's kind of one of those sort of up-the-hill battles where you can easily go a certain direction, but most people choose not to go those directions. Because, like, if I have to see another thing with these same sort of people happening over and over and over again, I'm going to get a little pissed about that. And I think most fans want to see things change up a little bit. And I think that's kind of where you're going to be seeing pretty soon, where some NXT names are supposed to be going up soon. Karrion Kross was in a dark match for SmackDown, as well as Bronson Reed, both current champions, the top two champions, by the way, on NXT. There has been plans to bring Karrion Kross up because his character overall is what Vince wants. Now, the thing about this is, though, NXT doesn't need Karrion Kross there, but he'd be better off staying there for a while. But everyone knew that once Vince saw him, he would want him. He's been that way all the time. The thing is, if you can't use other guys correctly right now, why take Karrion? That's the sort of thing that Triple H just has to basically say to Vince, like, hey, okay, if you got a plan for the guy, cool, let's bring him up and do something with him. But if you have no plans for him and he's going to sit around and do nothing, just show up for a couple weeks and he's gone, I don't want to give him to you. And they stopped doing that a while back. But the problem with that is, though, now you got all these things in the way, like this current championship the man holds, where taking him right now would be a bad thing. But I think what you get away with is having to do double duty if he were to go up pretty soon. Now, I think the reason I would bring Karrion up would be because Raw needs other guys who can challenge Bobby Lashley. Now, Karrion Kross coming up just to lose to Bobby would be a bad idea. So I think that having him go there makes no sense at all, even though fans would like to see him there. So if you have him come up, he had to lose his championship on NXT, which would be a difficult thing. So theoretically, he could go up there and challenge Bobby for a championship and have your throwaway match at Money in the Bank. Sure, but most fans would see him come up just to lose to Bobby, even though we may like Bobby a lot. It's just he's too good of a guy to have come up and just be wasted like that. It's not good. Anyone could take that losing spot to Bobby. Why have it be Karrion? So that's something that fans would not buy into, whereas Bronson Reed could come and lose, and fans would be okay with that because he's still North American champion. He's a guy that fans are kind of always lukewarm on. So it's not like having him go up would change things. It would hurt a lot for Karrion Kross to go up just to lose, especially with this big run he's been having on NXT. Undefeated in singles competition, by the way. That's a very big thing to think about. So there's a lot of people going to go up to the top roster, but the main roster on Raw and SmackDown pretty soon. I don't know who all it's going to be, but those two men are the 1-2 punch that I think most are expecting to go, only because they were brought in for dark matches, where that typically is the first sign of guys being added to SmackDown or Raw rosters. They usually start them in dark matches, see how they're going to work, and then decide to bring them up after that. The time and date are not always known, though. Also, NXT-wise, we got Samoa Joe back this week. If you didn't remember that, it was a pretty big deal to bring him back. I told you guys on the WNH Live, WNH page, I said that there had been talk about this backstage, and even other websites talking about it, where Joe had been rumored as a guy coming back. We didn't know yet. No one really knew, but most thought that he hasn't been cleared yet, because if he was cleared, he would be wrestling elsewhere right now, or would be very soon. But there had been something where we heard about how he had passed a test one or two places, but didn't do it in a couple big places that he really wanted to pass at. And although we knew the reasoning for WWE's decision not to pass him, it's still mostly political for them. Asked Danny Bryan about that one. If he gets the same opinion elsewhere, that's a big difference. His concussion happened in early 2020. They put him on the Raw announce team for a while. He didn't want to stick around there. He wanted to compete again. WWE said, we can't do that. If you're not going to come with us here, we got to let you go. So they basically did that. But that wasn't a decision from Triple H. That was a decision by upper guys and other people that didn't want to talk about it. So Triple H reached out to Joe probably personally, brought him back. Now he's doing something for NXT, and I guess they'll wait around for as long as they can to see if his concussion issue is going to clear up. May or may not. We don't know. And so I'm not really of the to say he's going to be back in the ring, because I couldn't say that. But they can get away with a lot of things here, which is something similar to what happened with Stone Cold Steve Austin years ago on Raw, where he and Eric Bischoff became co-GMs for a while on Raw. And there was a time frame where Austin could not get back in the ring and compete because of his neck issues, because of knee issues. So they had him look as tough as they could by being the sheriff of Raw, or co-GM, where he became sort of an enforcer, where Bischoff told him, you can't get physical in the ring. You can't do anything unless you're physically provoked. That was what the whole thing was about. If you are ever physically provoked, that was management's push to it. You can then attack whoever, only if you're physically provoked. Meaning you can't touch them unless they touch you. This is a big sort of rule, which I think a lot of fans were thinking about when Joe was told that, where he was told by William Regal, I want you to be GM. He refused GM role, but he thought, you know what, you stick around, I'll be sure to be your enforcer here, volunteering his services to be, I guess, a bodyguard, but also someone who can actually enforce whatever Regal's rulings are. And now Regal thinks, okay, well, you can be the enforcer, but you can't just go around attacking people. You may want to, but you can't. So you're going to be a special enforcer if you want to be, but you cannot do anything unless you're physically revoked. We knew eventually that would come back around, and they did not waste time either. In fact, they gave us something that we really wanted to see. It was one of those things where I think WWE was smart for this because they gave us something. We didn't is really good at being a good writing team there, but they gave us something that they wanted to get the same day. We got exactly what that was going to be. They didn't tease it for us for weeks at a time where someone almost bumps into somebody and then maybe that gets to Joe. No. They had a fight between Cole and O'Reilly backstage. Cole pushes Samoa Joe. Joe thinks, okay, now it's on, dumbass, and then chokes him out. Just goes there and just yanks Cole back and chokes him the hell out. And that's one thing that Joe can do, but that he can get away with even though he has that concussion issue there, where he may not have a problem with the brain, but on a scan there's an issue there, and therefore he can't get back in the ring. But he can still do things from a physical perspective that really anyone could get away with doing. And it's not going to hurt his head or anything like that because he's not going to be attacked. He just attacks others, and it will probably only be offensive. There will be no defensive movement there. So choking guys out like that enforces something. It says to people like Cole and anyone else watching, I can put you down, so don't cross me, dumbass. If you do, again, I'll put you down. So this ensures Regal's words will hold ground, and it means there's not going to be people just bursting into his room saying what he has to do anymore, or saying what he must do, or even trying to threaten him. Because now Samoa Joe is the heavy around saying, if you threaten him, it's like you're threatening me, and if you touch me, I'll put you down. I mean, how many times are we going to do this here? So I like that. I think it's the best thing for Samoa Joe right now to do, especially when he can't get back in the ring, and it still makes him look good. So in the future, if he can get back out there, you've got a set up story ready to go. He can easily be put back in the ring and work with other guys whom he's brought down a peg a bit for Regal. That's a really interesting thing to do. It's the same story they did with Austin that worked really, really well on Raw. I don't think it will work any less on NXT. So I'm excited for that. I think it's great for them. But also, NXT right now is the hottest show WWE has. There's tons of guys on the card that everyone knows is top tier or top shelf guys. So it's a good show to have. But it also means that because there's so many guys there, someone's going to go up pretty soon. And Karrion Kross is the only character there, which is why I say he's probably the one to go up. Most of the guys who are there are probably going to NXT lifers or guys who are going to be there a little longer. I think there's others that may go up sooner rather than later. Kross is the only guy there right now that I think is so ready to go that he makes sense to be there immediately. So we'll have to wait and see. Going back to Hell in a Cell, Bliss versus Baszler. This is a bigger situation here because Baszler has sort of gotten on the bad side of Alexa Bliss's new character. And this is a bad sign for Baszler, where if she goes on the bad side of this evil character that is, I guess, super powered, you'd imagine that would be a bad thing. Now, I'm not of the ilk to believe in witchcraft. I think all witchcraft is bullshit and can be explained with using just any science whatsoever, because ultimately that is what it is. But people who can use the occult powers like that, someone with a Fiend did, it's pretty cool for a character to go out with. If you can do that, you have power that I do not have. So I don't want to deal with you. So I don't know why Baszler is trying to fight Bliss or even wants to fight Bliss, because ultimately I would say, okay, I want to stay away from this crazy bitch. Get me away from her. I want to go here, not here. So I don't know what Baszler's whole thing is here. But obviously she's understandably upset with Bliss, but I don't see the storyline-wise why anyone would want to cross Bliss right now. But because we know what she can do, it's not as if there's a good thing for us to get involved with here. And she's got even more powerful since WrestleMania for some reasons. There's no reason as to why that is, but from a story perspective, I guess by defeating the Fiend, or taking away his power or whatever it was. Now she absorbs whatever the Fiend could do, which for someone who's 5 foot nothing is probably pretty good to have. But I don't know. Again, I'm not really big on the occult, but I'm pretty positive that someone with that ability and power probably would be someone I would not want to ever see in the light of day or night or any time of a 24-hour spectrum. So there's that. This match is probably going to be going Bliss's favor because obviously, but that's probably all to talk about with that one. Now, this is the one I'm interested in the most. Here's the thing. I think Bayley and Bianca they're going to be great tonight. They're going to have a great match. But the one match I'm very interested in is Rhea and Charlotte. Here's why. Now, even though I think Charlotte Flair being in the cell in the past has been great for her experience-wise, she was in the first ever women's cell match with Sasha Banks. She won the match too, by the way. This match is not so much a situation where I'm looking at this whole thing of it being a big match for either woman. It's another match with Rhea and Charlotte. But here's the cool part. There was a slip of the tongue on Raw this past week where someone, I believe it was Jimmy Smith, said that Charlotte Flair was a 14-time champion. That's a lie. She is not a 14-time champion. She is 13-time champion if you add in her one tag team title. Therefore, she has 12 women's titles, counting her NXT ones. 12 women's titles, 12 world championships, 13 titles total with the tag team. There isn't a 14th. That tells me that he knew something that we did not. So, if you want to go conspiracy theory with this, Charlotte would win tonight. Now, here's the reason why I say that. It's so easy to put down. Charlotte Flair has already been inside the cell before. It's a match that you can get away with any rules, anything you want. It's all legal. Charlotte knows how to take advantage of those things. She is the daughter of the dirtiest player in the game. Keep that in mind. She also is the most experienced person in the entire company, especially in top-tier matches for women. So, if there's any match that is clear to me that a new title or a title change hands, this is the one match I think that it does. Because every other match on the card tells me there's no title changing hands. Bianca had just won her title previously, and she's someone that the company believes in a lot, who they believe could be one of their top girls. You don't want to take that person away from her title right away, even though it's involved inside the cell. Bayley had also just been champion for over a year last year. There's no reason to bring her back and give her the championship that quickly, especially when they really want to build around Bianca for a while. And Bianca has plenty of other girls she can work with on SmackDown, not just Bayley. So there's plenty to go out with there. You don't have to waste this whole thing by having Bayley and Bianca in a rivalry that goes back and forth for 3, 4, 5 months. Charlotte Flair, though, this is still Charlotte Flair. She's still the company's golden girl. That's a big deal. That tells me there's plenty of movement there, where the company's willing to consider the idea of having someone like Rhea Ripley, who obviously just came in to win the title pretty much, to beat Asuka for it. They like her a lot, but not as much as Bianca. But more importantly, this is a match involving the cell, and it's much easier to set up a reasoning of why Rhea lost, because you could say, well, you didn't really beat me in a normal match, Charlotte. I beat you in every other normal match there was. You couldn't beat me until you could change the rules. And so you can make your own rules. So it's a built-in excuse right there. So you have Charlotte Flair automatically being called this 14-time champion, which she is not. She's 13-time if you add the title. So it does seem on a conspiracy basis here that they were preparing for Charlotte to be this new 14-time champion. And it is the only match on the card that makes any sense for a title to change hands on. To me, that's the one match I think, okay, it's possible. Now, I'm not saying she's going to win. Do not get me wrong here. I'm just saying, if you look at conspiracies, if you look at overall stuff on the card, this is the one match, the only match, where a title could change hands. And it's very rare to have 3 Hell in a Cell matches on a card, all on titles, where none of them change hands. I don't foresee Drew beating Bobby tonight. I think it'll be dumb for Bianca to lose tonight. It makes no sense really for her to lose because they really like her a lot. The fans love her. The fans are massively behind her after that point of Mania with Sasha. There's just no reasoning here to have anything happening with Bianca. And plus, if they want to bring Sasha back to do something with her at SummerSlam, they got that set up ready to go whenever Sasha comes back. So there's plenty of movement there. You can't get away with that with Bayley. It'd just be a random throwaway situation to get Bayley a title just to have Banks and Bayley again at SummerSlam or something like that, which I think is kind of pushy. I'd love to see Bianca and Sasha too, especially giving them a little more time. Maybe having a SummerSlam match where you give them a 30-minute Iron Woman match. I think that'd be awesome. It's ready to go to me. I mean, if that's the match to end the show on, what a match that could be, because they were great at Mania. I'd love to see them happening again, but give it a stipulation like the Iron Man match. I think that'd be really cool. We've already seen that with Sasha and Bayley. It would be different with Sasha and Bianca, which I think it could be fun because we'd see the wind and how good that Bianca could do involving those longer matches, which could give her more matches that have longer rate in the future if she can do well with it than that one. So it's kind of an open movement there. But anyway, this whole thing screams for Charlotte to beat Rhea. And I say that all because I think there's plenty of movement there for her where there's very little for Rhea. And ultimately, I don't think they know what to do with her. Rhea has been made to be a heel and face back and forth for months now. I don't think they really know, yet at least, what they want to do. And I think maybe we'll think Rhea was likely to come up and do something with Charlotte after Mania. But Charlotte's COVID diagnosis, as well as her issue with Lacey Evans and others, they really thought the best person to bring in right now would be Rhea after Asuka beating everybody else there. So it made sense. And now they have to figure out what to do there. And ultimately, I think that they had to go with Rhea beating Asuka and then do this whole rivalry with Asuka and Rhea for a bit. Asuka, Rhea, and Charlotte. Now it's down between Charlotte and Rhea. So there's movement there that I think makes the most sense to go toward, where you could say in any scenario that there's an excuse built up for Rhea. There's a lot of sense of why Charlotte, the experienced person in this whole match, would beat Rhea in it. And there's more reasoning to believe that happening with a title change than any the match on the card. It just makes sense to me, and maybe I'm wrong about it all. Maybe there's all the other titles change hands except for that one, and that's not shocking. It's happened before, so I'll have to wait and see. Some more comments here. Let's see. Once Cross goes to Raw or SmackDown, I'm not going to be interested in anybody in the next year. Maybe LA Knight, because I love his character. He's sort of emulating The Rock. I don't know if it's emulating The Rock at all, because The Rock's character had changed a few times over the years. But if you're going to go with the Hollywood version of The Rock, which he was because he was becoming a movie star, he was a heel then too, but he wasn't the same. LA's been put to this situation where he's been a heel from the beginning, the same heel, loudmouth heel pretty much. That's all he really was. The Rock was a character that became more of a loudmouth because of the character. LA's overall character is loudmouth, so it's a little bit different. But I like what they did with him with Ted DiBiase. I told people to begin with, it made no sense for LA to have a manager like Ted around, because Ted is someone who, while great on the microphone, LA is damn good on the mic. Why have him have anyone else to do that for him? Taking the title makes sense. Now he has that to work with, and now Ted can go. So they had to find a way around that, and they did exactly what I thought they would do. They had Ted get beaten down by LA on the show, have Grimes become that understandable good guy, and there's a lot of reasoning of why there could be a good rivalry between LA and Grimes going forth, where Grimes takes over the character of sorts that Ted brought, but the title is in the hands of LA. So there's a lot of really cool things there. No. Because do we see the Fiend come back and kill Alexa Bliss in a storyline? Just a thought. Well, I don't think you'd ever get away with doing a kill storyline in the WWE. Not because it's not a good idea, but because it's still a PG company, and killing is not something they can do now. Because again, this whole thing of real life connected to the fake world we're in here, they don't want to go too fake or too story driven, and they don't want to go too reality based. So when someone attacks you from behind, it's called assault in the real world, and then go to prison for that. If you get beaten down in a hallway somewhere, or you get beaten and bloodied up, and like you attack an old man or whatever, in WWE you get a storyline with an old man's son or something, and that starts to a match where they just face off for a while. That's basically how it gets settled in the world of WWE. But on the outside world, you would go to prison for that. So there's a lot of things there that make no sense in wrestling. But a storyline that killing somebody would work in other companies, but it wouldn't work well in the WWE. But also keep in mind too, you can't really kill Alexa Bliss, but you can kill a character. And that's sort of what they did with TNA for a bit, where they had, I think, at one point they wanted to push someone in front of a train or something like that. It was a weird situation. I think it involved James Storm and Mickey James. I don't know the full story there. I forget about it, but it was a weird story, and fans didn't like that. They tried out something new, good for them, but fans just didn't like that sort of thing. The Fiend is likely to come back eventually. I don't know. It depends when Bray's willing to come back. Right now, we don't know yet, but I'm on that sort of fence where I'm saying to people, it's probably not good, but I'm not really a big fan of the kill stories either, because again, they present a very big fake sort of thing. It's fine to do these sort of matches with like The Undertaker and Kane, where you bury someone alive and you assume they're dead, but there's assumptions there. There's no guarantee of someone being dead. Assumptions are easy to get good with in a storyline because you're going to say to people, "Hey, this is real, but not," and fans just go with you with it because they kind of relieve themselves of that feeling of this being real, so they're okay with someone being buried alive because you know eventually we'll see them come back. Weird as it might be, most people do not come back when they're buried alive. It doesn't really happen that often. There was a story years ago about a guy about a sentence that was taking people out and killing them, but not really. It was basically making him like pass out for a day or two at a time, and they'd wake up and it's like coffins in the ground, and then they found that someone that had been dying from whatever they actually died inside the coffin from lack of oxygen, and they opened up these caskets for many people that thought had died from this random disease that wasn't actually killing the disease. It didn't kill anyone. In fact, what killed them was the coffin. So there's little scratching marks on them too. And there's one woman who scratched to the bone, literally, to try and get out because she couldn't get out. It was a real live story that actually happened to people years ago. So there was this idea of that we need to give someone like a pipe to the oxygen and a bell to ring. So if they're alive, they'll ring this bell. And one guy who came up with the idea of that was so paranoid about his possibility of being dead early that he actually had his coffin underground normal put on top of the grass where he was at. You could see his face, his decomposing face, but a bell was there to work with. And so for a long time, people were buried with the bell ability just out of fear that maybe they might die because of that. So if they could ring the bell. Once I figured out what the problem was, no one ever died that way again. Paranoia made people want to have the bell. So that's what happened. That's a situation that I think you could probably use here because it's using real life. So if you want to go that direction of death, that's fine. But that's the only thing I could do that would mirror real and fake, that actually fans could get behind, even if it's like a different take of sorts on the buried alive concept, because it's a reality thing that actually happened. You look it up if you want to soon after the broadcast ends. Look it up. Just look up the fact of like Google search, bell, people dying in coffin, that or whatever, and it'll probably bring it up. Google's pretty good about search stuff like that. It's a great story, by the way. Freaking awesome. Search telling me there's going to be a women's Hell in a Cell match tonight. Yeah, there's two of them. Which probably is the first time ever, I believe, there's been two women's stall matches on the same card at the same night. I don't believe it's ever happened before. Did it really happen? Shinsuke relieve the king? I don't know. He is now the official king, and Corbin is now just a baron. Do you guys see what he did there? He said, I need to be like given a high five for that one. Like, come on. That was good. You can't say that was bad. It was perfect as a joke. If you say it was a bad joke, you're just a bad person. That's all it comes down to. You're a bad person. I was good. I had a good joke there. I think it was great. Let's see. Yeah, there's a couple other of the other matches to go over real quick. We got 5 minutes before we can go. So if you have any other comments or whatnot, put them below, and I'll go over those here in a second. But while you're doing that, I'm going to go over these few things here. The two WrestleMania rematches are Cesaro and Rollins, KO and Zayn. I don't really foresee this being different from the original, but I could definitely see Zayn and KO being different because KO did win. He always won the original match, so it would make sense for Zayn to do the second. especially with this focus on his big conspiracy theory, which I think you could probably muddy a little more with a win. And that's a really cool thing to try and do if we're going to build around the story that will never end about the conspiracy. And a documentary that we think must come out, but won't. It's one of those things where I think having him beat Owens kind of muddies the waters of that being going around, and fans will kind of think, let's say, well, if you beat him, what was the conspiracy there? Well, that was because that's a one referee that was a conspirator. That's something I think you could probably muddy a little bit. It's easier to do that if you're trying to kind of remove this idea of a documentary being around that he's talking about that will never exist. So until such time that it does, you need to have these wins a little for Zayn here and there to keep muddying that story a little more. Cesaro and Rollins, though, a little different. Cesaro had a situation with Reigns recently that I think many felt was a pretty good story that needed to come back again, but didn't overdo that. And so this gives Cesaro a chance to kind of come back and do something with Rollins. And I think Rollins and Cesaro had a great match the first time, but it wasn't given much time. I think they could definitely give it more time. And on a match card like this one, where there's a little more time for everybody, I think you could give this a good 20-minute, maybe 30 minutes if you wanted to, but then 20 is probably all they'll give it. And have it to be where maybe Rollins cheats to win, and Cesaro could have a gripe saying, I had you beaten, but you had to do this to beat me. Or maybe he gets disqualified. There's a lot of room to grow with that one, but you don't want to have this storyline happening over and over again. You don't want to go back and revisit a story. As good as Rollins and Cesaro was the first time, I don't want to continue to see it over and over again, because at that point, it just becomes a grudge match that is just for pride only. There's nothing happening in this story that makes any sense to continue to go with, other than the fact that it's a good match each time. That's all you're getting. And there's no stipulation here. So that easily could take us into Money in the Bank, where they're both involved in Money in the Bank. And it's probably where the story will officially end, where maybe Cesaro and Rollins, the last few guys on the ladder next month, and therefore you have Cesaro maybe beat Rollins and everybody else in the match by just pushing him out. So Rollins beating Cesaro tonight kind of makes us believe that Cesaro couldn't win at Money in the Bank. But you could also say, well, if Cesaro beats Rollins, makes us really more so care about him being the winner at Money in the Bank. So it could go either way, but I think I wouldn't be shocked if Seth wins for that reason. And also wouldn't be shocked if Zayn wins for the same. It kind of makes sense to go the direction only because of the position you put yourself in as a story writer. So that's what I see it going as. So that's just me. Going to the last match, which again, this is McIntyre's last chance to go after the world title. If Bobby wins, it's done for Drew until Bobby loses the title, wherever that might be. So a good sort of story like this normally goes out to being a situation where a guy in this situation usually wins. But I love for that to change, where you say to people, hey, we're not going to give you the same thing you've seen 1,000 times. This stipulation is a stip that normally ends up being in the favor of the guy who has a stip on him. If we give this to the guy who doesn't, it makes it more fun, because a story like that makes it to where Drew wants to do all he can to stay in contention and try and help other guys maybe to become winners so that he can get in the chance at the title. So it makes it more fun that way. So Bobby still does not have to get away with this whole thing of he's done with Drew. It's easy to do with, and I think many fans are cool with that, because we want to see differences and changes like that. We always talk about how the show should need to change, or the writing needs to change a little bit. And this is the real only time right now I think you could do this without fans getting pissed off at you, where we're kind of done with Bobby and Drew. It will continue next month if Drew wins. No. And it's tonight. And it's tonight. That's my 2 cents in the whole matter, but that's just me. That being said, there, guys, you'll see us again. We should be back on Thursday. I don't know yet, because Lee seems to have this allergic reaction to Thursdays, even though he's the one who set the day to happen. So you'll have to get to him on that one. So that's just me. But I hope we're back on Thursday. If not, we'll be back someday next week. Thursday's probably the one that I'm going to hold him to. So, yeah. That being said, I'll see you guys hopefully then. But if not, we'll see you sometime next week anyway for our Men of 1004 Thoughts show. Yeah, I did an echo there. I thought I could have made that. That's just me. Anyway, see you guys next time around. Adios and goodbye.